Welcome back, guys, to our small business series. I am here once again, joined by my dad, Don Williams. Welcome.
I thought you were going on to the next one. I didn't know you wanted to.
And then Jonathan from TChem.
Welcome.
And Mr. John.
Yeah, this is
Senior.
This has been fun. Yeah. And the best is yet to come. Okay.
So for anybody that's just now tuning in, first time you're hearing this, we're talking all about starting and running a successful small business. Combined, I believe we have about 100 years of small business experience. So that's good, bad, and otherwise. I think we've all combined have seen just about every part of that. And we're just sharing some of it because it is a unique experience. And I believe there's a lot to be learned from others. Just because you're on your own in your business does not mean that you should not seek the guidance of others. And that's something I think is worth throwing out there, right? I think finding a mentor may be the one thing that we didn't talk about in our episode right before you get started. That could save you a whole lot of trouble if you'll find somebody who has done what you want to do and can kind of lead you away from some of the mistakes that you are likely to make if you don't. But today I want to talk a little bit about what motivated us? What's motivating you to start a small business? Everybody, I think, has different reasons, and I'm very interested to hear as we go around the table as to what has inspired everyone here to do it. Jonathan, I want to start with you because you have a little bit different experience. You came into the running a small business world a little different, similar to how I did. What motivated you to want to get away from a corporate environment? You were really kind of an executive is that how you describe it?
Yeah, it was a nursing home executive. And what I found was as I climbed the corporate ladder is there's always a ceiling and there's always going to be a ceiling. And until ultimately you own your own, there's always a boss and there's always a directive. And we were sold that I ran several buildings. I had my own staff, and we were always sold that we were the entrepreneur. And I took that hook, line, and sinker and took a salary and realized that, wait a minute, when you add up the hourly rate on your salary, you're working for peanuts. And then ultimately, as you'll find out as you run your small business, that whoever controls the dollar is ultimately the entrepreneur, not your staff, not the people below you. So that's what I found out is no matter how hard I worked or the decisions that I made that I felt was best for the business that I was running, I still had to have checks on my thought process. And for me, I never truly felt like I wanted to own my own small business. I had a friend that kept pushing me that direction, and I kept fighting it. And I didn't realize that until I actually came into my own small business that was the problem all along. I found myself frustrated and always could never do enough. And I think that was the biggest key is that ultimately at the end of the day, there were still somebody else that had to make a decision, but yet I still had the consequence of the decision. So now, in your own small business, when you make that decision, you also live with that decision. You pray with that decision, you sleep with that decision, your family does, everything's affected by it. But I always when people ask that question, I always look back at when you mow your lawn and you're done and you look back and it's perfectly striped, there's satisfaction to that. And every decision that you make in your own small business, you can sit back and look back at that decision, whether it's good or bad, and still have satisfaction that you learned from it, even though it wasn't the best decision, you still learned from something, or it was a fantastic decision and there was profitability made out of, or you had an impact on someone's life and you get to reap that. And it's not like Don mentioned in the previous episode it's not always about the money. Well, that ties into that, the satisfaction of what you're doing, every decision you make, to me is the reason why I'm in small business. And I've had this discussion with my wife, like, what if we had to? I was like, I couldn't go back. I would find something to do, start a janitorial business if I had to, or something else just to make do, just because of that idea of the satisfaction that comes with that. It would be tough. And when I came into small business, I still had a license that I was maintaining that would have allowed me to go back in. And ultimately, I got to that point where I'm not 100% vested as long as I'm holding this as a potential what if. So when I finally let go of that license and realized that I'm not going to do continuing education to maintain that, I'm completely vested in what we're doing. That's when I realized that this is where I belonged.
I think that either you have that spirit of wanting to make decisions and being able to live with the consequences, or you're probably not going to be able to live with being in business for yourself. I mean, you have to have that spirit. But I think you really captured something that it's important. I think it's important. If you don't identify with that at least a little bit, it's probably not for you. And some people are very happy working a job, having a paycheck come in, knowing that when they turn it off, it's turned off. You don't get to do that when you're on your own business.
No, you don't.
Even if you turn your business off, you're still carrying it with you because ultimately the buck stops there. And some people thrive on that and some don't. Dad, what made you want to get into business for yourself? I was always raised and I always felt like you were a serial entrepreneur almost your entire adult life. But what motivated you to want to do that, and how did it get started? What was the beginning?
I think the bottom line was I always thought I could do it better. What I saw, what I was experiencing, look around, I just had, I knew that I could give more, I could do more than what other people were doing. So, the businesses that I've started, they've almost been, they've played off of each other. I started out as a carpenter. I've worked with my hands, and I've started a home improvement company, and from there started a construction company, and now we're have a home inspection company. So they've kind of played off of each other. But I always thought as I changed direction of what I was doing, I thought I can do that better than what I'm seeing. When I was doing home improvements, I was working for some contractors and seeing the kind of houses that they were putting together, and I thought I can do that. I can do that better. And so it just kind of ran together that way. But it was always really, I think that was at the core of it. I think I can do better.
That's a key point. The fact that he stayed somewhere within the realm of his past experience. That is really critical, I tell you, because a number of times over the years, as a formerly trained mechanical and chemical engineer, I tried to go off in other directions that had nothing to do with that. And every time I failed. And I'd always come back to where I came from. And you can take certain aspects of that and build on it. But if you get too far astray, in other words, if you're going 180 degrees in the opposite direction, you may be setting yourself up for failure. All right. Another key thing that you said, Brad, was that I think that people are born with certain propensities. All right. Some of it's inherited and some of it's environmental, what you grow up in. I never saw my dad work on anything, try and sell anything. He had other skills, other interests, and other talents, But for some reason, I wanted to work on stuff and I wanted to sell stuff. So I don't know where that came from. It didn't come from him. Mom wasn't that way. So there's certain things that, and once you recognize that you have those God-given talents, you can take them and build on them. Some people love to sell. They get high on the action. Other people hate to sell anything. Mm-hmm. They won't. They'll fight it. And so you have to take that into consideration when you decide you want to be in business for yourself, because you are a salesman, whether you want to be or not, unless you're going to hire a salesman, but you won't be able to afford to on the front end. You are the salesman, and you have to develop those skills so that when you approach somebody, they won't be offended or they won't be suspicious or whatever. And you have to kind of develop a demeanor that is non-threatening, and then people open the door, and as they trust you, they open the door wider and wider. But my point is that always be aware that there's certain propensities and certain gifts that you have, and if you can build on that and plug it into your business, it makes it fun, it makes it easy, because man, it's if it's something you end up hating, you're not going to last very long. You're going to end up staying home, right? Staying home and being discouraged. But if something you get high on the action, man, that's what I talked about, the passion. It keeps you going and going and going, even when people are saying, why are you in that stupid business, And sometimes it's not necessarily for the money. It's just because, like Jonathan said, the word is closure. every day you've got closure on this, closure on that, closure on the other. Now, building a house, it's a long time before you get closure, but even still, it's a step by step. Okay, the masonry contractor, he's done. All right, the roofer's done. The framer's done. So it is step by step, but it's longer drawn out. But in our business, because of the nature of it, it's just these little closures all day long. And it keeps you going. It keeps you coming back. And you have this feeling of satisfaction. So when you go to bed at night, you feel like you can almost calculate all the different things we accomplished today. It's a beautiful thing. Whereas if you're working for the man, like say the Postal Service. The Postal Service. You work for the United States Postal Service. Those poor people, they have to turn off their brain, literally, and just, but they get paid very well to do that. But not everybody can turn their brain off and just be told what to do, all day, every day.
Well, you have to be critical of yourself. Brad shared a book, The E-Myth, with me. And it kind of highlighted as I'm sitting around, the table with different individuals here. My dad he's a technician, so we're all entrepreneurs, but each one of us have different passions. So I think you need to be real with yourself.
You're a manager.
Right, exactly.
I was just helping you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a manager. So, you've got to be real with yourself on the front end of that. Like, I went into this business partnering with Dad, knowing where my strong points were and knowing where my weaknesses were. I knew coming in that I had to surround myself with a team to do the job. I knew how to get it done, and I knew what I wanted. And I was very clear in the picture that I saw through every step of the way, but I also knew that it was not going to work unless I had that team to do that. And the team transitions, it's always going to adjust, but ultimately, especially if you're a technician, you know how to do the job, but you may not know how to run the business. So, you need to be upfront before you start. Be upfront on that. Don't just leave your job and think, I could do this better than the person I'm working for. They're making all the money. Well, it may seem that way, but it's not like that. Profitability is a razor thin thing that you may not understand. So just be honest with yourself about what you're bringing to the table in your business and how you need at least one more person to start with to help, keep you on the right path.
There's a lot that we could unpack out of what you just said, and we will on some future episodes. Dad, I think that what you said, how you believed you could do it better, I grew up watching you have the skills to do a lot more pieces of a business than a lot of people who start a business. You have an innate ability to manage your finances and be the technician when you needed to and be the manager when you needed to. But I think we're both entrepreneurs at heart. We both love to dream about the next big idea. Not everybody has that. And
that can be a fault as well.
It can be.
Because you can get, you don't want to release things. If you can do a multitude of things, you think, well, nobody's going to do this as well as me, so I've got to keep doing it. And you can't, if you're going to grow, you can't do it all.
And so, I think in the next episode, what we need to talk about is about what that looks like, what a team looks like. Because even if you're working by yourself, for yourself, there's a team required. So let's put a pin in that, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. John, I want to get to you. What made you want to go out into business for yourself? Because you weren't always. You worked for someone else.
Well, full disclosure, I had some great W-2 jobs historically, and managed to, work my way out of most of them for the simple reason I was bored.
He couldn't keep his mouth shut. That's why.
No, it wasn't that. It was just my dad was a union shop steward, so I was raised to have an opinion about everything, and that wasn't necessarily, especially here in the South, where people are a little more, I don't know, what can I say, closed off. They aren't as open as people from the North.
We call it genteel here,
No, actually, it's called Southern Grace is what it's called.
There you go.
And they would take exception to some of my opinions. And I would say, well, either it's black or it's white. It's not gray. And they didn't see it that way, especially when they were family-owned business. And some of them were. Some of them were major corporations. So I always managed to make a nuisance of myself, basically. But it was because I needed to be self-employed, because every time that I move into the self-employment arena, no matter how successful I was or wasn't, still I felt better about, the future and so forth and my destiny. But overall, I think it was I needed to be self-employed. And my dad he retired after 23 years in the union, as a union shop steward and so forth. So everything with him was about security. So it wasn't environmentally speaking. I always rebelled against that. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So like you said, Brad, you're probably born with some of that. You can develop it, but if it's a natural propensity, it's easy to build on. So I think that what I saw was what the phrase we use around here is low-hanging fruit, opportunity everywhere. It was like, why isn't somebody doing that? Well, let me try it. And it always would bear fruit. So it just kept growing and growing. We're probably one of the most diversified service companies around because of that, because of this propensity that low-hanging fruit here, there, everywhere. And it's there for the taking if you want it. And we always manage to do it better than most of our competitors. And that makes it exciting because it's something different all the time. And those of us who have attention deficit disorder love to have something different all the time instead of the same old, same old. Mm. If you put me in a post office, and I've had personal friends that retired from the post office, I mean, you'd have to probably put me in a straitjacket, within 6 months because
or sooner.
There's no incentive there to be creative, at all. So I can never fit into a bureaucracy because I just cause too much turmoil, So bottom line is, I think, and you have to weigh all that when you decide that you want to be self-employed. Is it something, are you going to get high on the action, or are you going to feel threatened every day? Like, oh, I'm glad the day is over. No, there has to be something there that keeps you coming back, no matter how many times you get kicked in the teeth. But a lot of times, we were going to start talking about your first customer or approaching customers. Sometimes no means you've not given me enough information. You're not being rejected. It's just they have not received enough information to make an intelligent decision. And that's a critical part of building a customer base. They went more. Tell them more. This will give you an opportunity,
Yeah, we are programmed. Part of our survival mechanisms that is inherited into us is that anytime we don't have enough information, we feel any fear, maybe we just want a situation to end, maybe we are preoccupied, we gravitate to the word no. And it might not have anything to do. This is like sales 101. So people saying no may not have anything to do with you. Mm-hmm. And it might just mean no this second, or it might mean
timing.
Like you said, tell me something else. It is amazing what follow-up will do for you if you will just stay in front of people. Because eventually they're going to, if you are consistent, and again, you do something they need, that's a key. But if you are consistent with people, they do come around eventually, most of the time, but anyway, that's a bit of a side note. I actually do want to share what I think about why I want to be in small business. I selfishly want to talk. I can remember being a child, and one of the things I always enjoyed doing was designing homes. You were building by this time. Mom was in the real estate world, and so that was all we ever talked about was houses. And I grew up looking at plan books. I was into looking at plan books before I was into looking at car magazines, and I loved car magazines. So I would read plan books, and I would study the plans, and I would reproduce them and draw them. And I remember my whole childhood being told, you're going to make a great architect one day. And I have a rebel spirit. So unfortunately, all that positive encouragement pretty much destined that I wasn't going to do it because I couldn't do what I was encouraged to do for the sake of it. And I probably should have been. But I remember thinking about, as a child, what would you want to do when you grow up? And you have all the standard professions, right? You don't think really outside the box. Right. And I always had a prevalent feeling about any of them, is that I don't want to do that because I perceived a glass ceiling on it. Mm-hmm. And I can't think of anything that makes me not want to get out of bed more in the morning, that wants me just to ignore it and not be a part of something, to think that there's a glass ceiling over my head. Yep. And being in business for myself, even though I probably put ceilings on myself and cap myself and hold myself back all the time with things that I do, not having that figurative glass ceiling is what it's all about. It's all about, it's whatever I make of it. It's as far as I want to take it, not what someone else says. And that's why I wouldn't survive in the corporate world. I couldn't do it. But I always wanted unlimited possibility. Yeah. That's what drives me. The idea that if I can think of it and make it happen, it can be. So that and I would just make a terrible employee. So you don't get to comment on that at all, Dad. I worked for my dad for a number of years. And somehow at the end of that, he wanted to be my business partner. So I don't know. I guess he just got soft. I'm interested, if you're listening to this, what drives you to want to be a small business owner? I would love to hear from other people. It takes a strong spirit. It takes a special person. And we live in a world now where the word entrepreneur is a catchphrase and a cliche, and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. But I think that's not really everybody, and it's not for everybody. To be successful at it, it does take a certain kind of person, a certain kind of independence. And in the next episode, I want to talk about that it's more than just being independent, though. That at the end of the day, a business is a machine. And a successful business owner also learns how to make himself a cog in the wheel of his machine and not try to be the whole machine himself.
That's right.
And so, whether you are the kind of person who wants to work for someone and be a cog in their machine, which there's nothing wrong with that. You may thrive there. You may be able to pour your passion singularly, because most of us are passionate. We get real passionate in a singular sense about some things in their business. But even if you have a business of your own, the sooner you realize that you are really good at part of it and you're really bad at another part of it. And the sooner you realize that and start to create that machine, the better off you'll be. So, thanks for joining us today. Does anybody have any closing thoughts before we? I think, I love talking about this stuff. This really gets me going. But in the next episode, we're going to talk about building that team. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on the next episode.
It takes more than pressure to get the job done. I'm Jonathan with TChem. Follow along as we get the down and dirty on how to save money, finish faster, and be a successful pressure washing pro.